Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to HIMediaTV. I'm your host, Evan from HIMediaTV, and today I want to talk about Skyrim. A long, action-packed, thrilling adventure filled with twists and turns and magic and mayhem, all through the grim, dark lands of Avalon. I lied. We're not talking about Skyrim. We're talking about Skyrim 2, aka Tainted Grail, Fall of Avalon. Elden Grail Fall of Skyrim is an open-world sandbox RPG that takes a lot of what works from games like Skyrim and gets rid of a lot of what doesn't. People forget, I think, sometimes about how long it's been since Skyrim was released in 2011. For context, it's been the same amount of time since Skyrim has been released as it had been since Pokemon was released in relation to the original Skyrim's released. And it's only getting longer. But don't worry. The Elder Scrolls 6 is definitely coming out next year. Probably. Most likely. But to bring it back on topic, in the increasing amount of time since Skyrim was released, plenty of attempted spiritual successors have come to market, all trying to fill that Elder Scrolls 6-size hole in many of us RPG lovers' hearts. Games like Obsidian's immensely fun, but shockingly unimpactful Avowed, to the sequel of the ball-bustingly difficult, but nonetheless fun, if you like those types of sims, Kingdom Come Deliverance, in the form of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Plenty of these would-be spiritual successors to the Elder Scrolls lineage, as it wallows away in development, have also made particular innovations in the formula that, quite frankly, make vast improvements on Bethesda's janky but familiar creation engine and its quirks. Tainted Ring Scrolls of Avalon makes use of these changes as well as a few of its own, probably the biggest of the changes being the non-continuous open world, which you would think would be heavily missed, but frankly not only improves optimization and load times, but is a lot better compared to the memory optimization of the Xbox 360 era. Jokes aside, with the advancement of technology and RAM recent shortages notwithstanding, the load times of these games are frankly not even that bad compared to the old days. What I think these segmented maps do is that you can freely fast travel to and from as you progress a story. This was an issue I had with Avowed. You had to physically, manually travel in a different screen to travel to different areas. I wasn't particularly fond of that. But that being said, having the map areas segmented from each other allows the map designers to focus more on making each map truly unique and impactful without having to worry about making sure they blend seamlessly into every other part of the map. A prime example of this is, say, in Skyrim, you have the slow, gradual change going north of Whiterun into the snows of I believe it's Windhelm. And frankly, not having to keep that in mind gives you a lot more space to work with as from a world design perspective. Okay, let's talk about the world design actually a little bit. The first area of the game you get where you get free reign to explore is a green and mildly rocky coast reminiscent of the cliffs of Dover in England, given Avalon's comparisons in lore and story to the British Isles as the basis of its landmass, and this type of landmass not being particularly unique in RPGs, the map development team did a stellar job of pumping this area filled with nooks and crannies and points of interest and secrets that make the world feel wholly unique. I will say I do ultimately want you to play this game, so I'm going to keep my descriptions of later maps and content fairly sparse. Feeding into the world design is the quest and writing that you embark on in this game, one of the big designs in Tarnished Grail Souls of Elder. Almost every location in the game, if not every location in the game, feeds back to a quest. So the completionists among you, if you find every quest and complete it, you'll experience everything on the map. Conversely, if you're an explorer, you'll find something or another in almost every location that you can pick up or discover or find that feeds into a quest that already exists that you haven't found yet, rewarding both the explorers that ignore quests and the questers themselves, leading to completionism in either path. In fact, the importance of digging in every nook and cranny is critical, and I would argue imperative to your success in both the game and in combat. So aside from the fact that one of the main mechanics you engage in as far as healing yourself, crafting, storing your hordes of loot in a bonfire, with a spirit that you can talk to regularly, one of the big differences between Dark Grail Fall of Tamriel and Elden Ring is that instead of said spirit being a Manic Pixie Dream Girl, it's a 6'7" beefcake in heavy plate armor. The hype around Elden Ring did change a lot of RPG's approach to combat, including Skyrim. Unlike in Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, where melee combat is akin to flailing around like a chicken with your head cut off until everything's dead from your dual-handed maces, Elden Ring Fall of Lindell uses a block and parry system that feeds into a Sekiro-like type of gameplay loop in which you can block with proper timing and deal damage to your opponent's stamina. This prevents them from being able to attack below a certain threshold, as well as attacking after said block. You can deal increased damage. My god, what a novel concept! Even so, these abilities do bring uniqueness to melee builds that helps in the viability area compared to what archers and magic-based builds can do. Even within these broad melee options, it depends on the type of weapons you're using. You have quick weapons like knives that have bonuses that allow you to deal more damage and more status and generate more critical chance based on the number of attacks you've done. You have two-handed weapons that are able to easily crash through an opponent's defenses with the greatest of ease. Duelist blades that allow you to have larger parry windows and then deal even more damage when parrying. One-handed weapons like normal one-handed weapons like swords that usually will have like broad different types of enchantments to kind of fill in the gaps of any builds and fill in all manner of builds in between. And all of these have like a level of diversity and power that archery doesn't even have. But speaking of archery, I do want to say for the transparency's sake, I didn't spend a whole ton of time with archery. It's like Skyrim, except the archers in archery has probably some of the best, if not the best, status effect build up in the entire game, and it's not even close. And so stealth archery is absolutely still completely valuable in this game. Magic was the way I went, and it has a few different options similar to melee, including a unique melee weapon that, frankly, you never want to use with it at all, because if you are within melee range, something terrible has happened. But there is a huge array of spells in this game that can be found as loot from merchants or rewards from quests or found in treasure chests. You have either pure spells in both hands or a wand in one hand and a spell in another, and while that wand is equipped, it bestows benefits, and you can also, bonk opponents over the heads as needed. You have soul cubes, which gain powerful effects or deal devastating attacks based off of how filled they are with power, and that can be done by things such as how many enemies you've killed while it's equipped, or how much magicka you've consumed, things of that nature. Even within the magic themselves, there's multiple different playstyles, including elemental effects /spam, along fire, ice, and lightning lines, siphoning abilities that allow you to both absorb health and explode corpses for damage and debuff enemies, summoning servants to do battle for you, and even absurd abilities like turning opponents into cheese. Okay, I'm going to keep it a bean. I don't want to spoil too much of the story, but I do want to at least talk about it a little bit. Remember how I mentioned that there's a ghost built like Johnny Sins that follows you around on your adventure like Melina from Elden Ring? Yeah, that's not the only similarity. The story is bleak. There is not a lot of hope for the future, despite there definitely being happy and good endings for a lot of the quests. A lot of the time you're going to be doing damage mitigation for the worst possible scenarios, but it's also rewarding because there are cases where you're actually able to save people and find the best scenario in the world that can genuinely get some better solutions and make people's lives better. There are some solutions that are better than others, and there are objectively good results. And I will say at times it does feel like Ring of Elden, Elden of Ring, Ring of Ring does kind of push you towards certain outcomes. But even so, there is plenty of discretion for you to make a call on making decisions on what you think is right. All in all, Tainted Skyrim, Grail of Elden is a fun game. Absolutely worth your time, and as we stray ever further from the hope that Elder Cope 6 will release in this decade, games like Elden Grail Tainted of Skyrim will certainly fill that gap for you. If you haven't picked it up, you definitely should. They already have a DLC that they've put out and continuously release new updates and add new content for free. But not only that, the replayability of the game is excellent because they added a new game plus. So if you weren't able to get the outcomes you wanted in one playthrough, or you wanted to try a different set of outcomes, or a different build with different gear in New Game Plus, ad infinitum, you can. There's also no level cap, so in theory, you can just, it's all out, level up all your skills, all at level 100 eventually, and play with whatever's evil zombie hybrid that one-shots everything you desire. The one thing that I hope Bethesda takes as they continue to develop the new Elder Scrolls game is not just lessons from this game, but lessons from all the other potential spiritual successors that have released in the last decade and a half. I think the game will be better for it. As far as Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon, I give it an Elden Ring out of Skyrim. Also join the Discord, you rat bastards, link in the description.